The whole family was queer except for my parents. The day my brother brought his boyfriend home, my dad swallowed a whole blood pressure pill without water and my mom dry-gulped a nitroglycerin tablet. My brother, Ethan, tried to reassure them, telling them not to worry, that they still had me, Cole. He was sure I was straight, so their dreams of being grandparents were safe. My best friend, Leo, and I just stared at each other. A moment later, Leo dropped to his knees on the linoleum. He asked my parents if he could just call them Grandpa and Grandma from now on, promising he'd be a very well-behaved grandson. That day, my dad's smile was a terrifying thing to behold. All four of us ran pretty fast. Ethan had stood in the center of the living room, a protective hand on the small of his boyfriend's back, and announced that this was Liam, his partner of 3 years. They were planning to get married in Vermont. He stated this was a notification, not a negotiation. He said he loved Liam and hoped for their blessing. After his words hung in the air, even the hum of the refrigerator seemed to cease. The hand I was secretly holding under the dining table, palm pressed against Leo's, was slick with sweat. In that vast, ringing silence, I felt like I could hear every unspoken judgment. I flinched, starting to pull my hand from Leo's, just as my dad spoke. He complained of a pounding headache. I dashed to the medicine cabinet for his lisinopril, which he downed in one go. My mom, her voice cracking, said her chest was tight. Leo bolted from the room and returned with her heart medication, which she took instantly. My mother was the first to unleash her fury. She couldn't believe Ethan was serious, that he actually liked men. She recounted all the times she and my dad had gone to community singles mixers, fighting with other parents for a good spot to talk up their handsome, successful son. She said she should have known, quoting some old saying about men who weren't married by 30. My brother sat there, impassive, spooning pot roast into his mouth as if he couldn't hear a thing. His boyfriend, Liam, was crimson-faced, staring at his plate, still as a statue. I knew Liam. He was a classmate of mine from undergrad who'd asked me for advice on grad schools. By some twist of fate, he'd ended up in my brother's Ph.D. program. Ethan, the doctoral candidate, had been assigned to mentor Liam, the master's student. I had no idea how they'd gotten together, but I distinctly remembered Liam dating girls in college. After my mom's tirade, my dad, having retrieved his belt from the bedroom, came charging at Ethan. He swore he'd beat the sense back into him, yelling about how he'd been a perfectly normal kid, wondering what had gone so wrong. Ethan shielded Liam with his own body, telling our father to direct his anger at him and leave Liam out of it. After a few half-hearted swings, my dad's energy dissipated. He called Ethan a disappointment, lamenting that on his 60th birthday of all days, this was the gift he received. He asked if Ethan was trying to send him to an early grave now that he was finally retired. Ethan, his neck rigid with defiance, insisted that he and Liam were in love. He then reminded them that they had another son, that Cole was straight, and that they would get their grandchildren eventually. That was my cue. I knew with a sickening certainty that if I didn't speak up now, I never would. I pulled Leo aside, whispering frantically for him to say something. He stammered for a moment. Then, as if making a desperate gamble, he dropped to the floor. He asked our parents if he could just be their grandson, promising to be good, or even to learn how to be mischievous if they preferred. My parents, who had just started to calm themselves down, completely lost it. My dad wondered aloud where they had gone wrong, insisting he'd never been like this in his youth. My mom muttered something about needing an exorcist. Ethan stared at me in disbelief, mouthing, "You too?" I just shot him a look that said, "Takes one to know one." The chaotic day ended with my dad throwing all four of us out of the house. The solid thud of the front door closing behind us was a sound of profound relief. In the dim, musty apartment building hallway, our two couples fell into each other's arms. We celebrated our successful, albeit disastrous, coming out with a flurry of loud, triumphant kisses. A strange competitive spirit took over, and we started a ridiculous contest to see whose kisses could be loud enough to startle the notoriously faulty motion sensor light into turning on. 5 minutes later, the door creaked open. My dad, who had apparently been watching through the peephole, couldn't stand it anymore. He roared at us to get lost, informing us that the light had been broken for weeks and wasn't coming on. We scattered like mice, me nearly twisting my ankle on the way down the stairs. We hadn't eaten much, and after an afternoon of yelling and drama, we were starving. Ethan led us to a local barbecue joint. He raised a glass of beer, toasting to our courage, then promptly ordered a massive plate of ribs, declaring it real man food. I made a face, which earned me a sharp glare from my brother. He grumbled that a real man knew what was essential barbecue fare. I retorted that maybe he was the one who was getting old, that men past 25 were useless after dark anyway. Just to twist the knife, I texted him a link to a Cialis ad and winked at Liam, telling him it was for his own good. Ethan slammed his fork down, asking if I had a death wish. I told him to get lost, that I planned on growing old with my Leo. Then I asked him, since he was planning on getting married in Vermont, if he could make it a double wedding. Ethan's face was a storm cloud. He mockingly repeated my pet name for Leo, then demanded the full story of how we got together, considering we used to despise each other. He proposed a trade, our story for his and Liam's. Exchanging relationship histories seemed like a fair price for the chaos he'd started. Seeing my own brother so curious, I decided it was time for a full confession. My history with Leo was a long and complicated one, I explained. He told me to give him the short version. We'd gone from mortal enemies to boyfriends, hating each other for 6 years before dating for nearly 4. From 12 to 18, we were rivals. From 19 to 22, we were in love. He was the son of my aunt's second husband, though my aunt had since divorced the man, severing our last official family tie. When we first met as kids, we clashed instantly. His mother had escaped an abusive marriage, but his father was a real piece of work. My aunt, blinded by affection, wouldn't listen to anyone's s. My dad, her brother, could only watch her make her own mistakes. Consequently, our family was initially cold to Leo. He wasn't really our blood, just a kid on the periphery. But he was a pitiful sight. Though half a year older than me, he was a head shorter, his skinny frame a canvas of bruises from his father's fists. That deadbeat knew my dad would destroy him if he ever laid a hand on my aunt. But Leo had no one. He was a safe target. My mother, seeing his plight, took pity on him and treated him with incredible kindness. Discovering he loved Legos, she gave him my entire collection. When I found my prized sets missing, I nearly tore the house apart. My mom, realizing her mistake, immediately took me to my aunt's house to retrieve them, placating me with a trip to McDonald's on the way home. That act of retrieval, however, earned Leo a terrible beating from his father. When I found out, I was consumed by guilt. I spent my entire savings on new Lego sets for him. Soon after, Leo transferred to my school and ended up in my class. The sight of him irritated me. The thought that he had touched my Legos triggered my obsessive need for cleanliness. He was even wearing my old hand-me-downs. My competitive streak flared. I didn't want him using my things, even if I was done with them. So I started tormenting him, finding any excuse to make his life miserable. But he wasn't one to take it lying down. He fought back. Our house was close to the school, so he would come over for lunch. We had a new afternoon schedule that included a nap time. With only 3 bedrooms, my parents', my brother's, and mine, and Ethan being in high school and off-limits, Leo had to crash in my room. I refused to let him on my bed, citing my germophobia. He started out sleeping on a thin blanket on the floor, which was cold and gave him constant stomach aches. Then one day, he saw me sharing a bag of flamin' hot Cheetos with a friend, our fingers orange with cheese dust, and realized my germophobia was a lie. I just didn't like him. From then on, he ignored my s. He'd get on my bed, roll around on it. I'd tell him not to touch me, and he'd poke me, mess up my hair, asking what I was going to do about it. For 2 years, we fought constantly. Our parents were at their wits' end. They asked my brother, Ethan, for advice. That cunning jerk suggested that since they couldn't get along, they should be forced together. He said hate was a more durable emotion than love, and that they should enroll us both in a martial arts class to use each other as punching bags. My mom thought it was a brilliant idea. A recent, tragic school bullying incident that ended in a student's suicide had been a major story at the newspaper where she worked. On the way to our first karate class, she lectured us, saying that whatever happened at home was private, but out in the world we had to have each other's backs. The class actually worked. Getting hit by a trained opponent hurt a lot more, and neither of us wanted that, so we declared a truce. Our relationship truly shifted the year my aunt's marriage imploded. We were about to start our senior year when she finally decided she couldn't take her husband's violence, his drinking, his erratic behavior anymore. She was ready to burn everything to the ground to be free. Leo was forbidden from having any contact with our family. He stopped coming over for lunch and moved into an 8-person dorm at school. We were still in the same class. I was a good student and sat up front. He didn't care much for school and sat in the back, playing on his phone or sleeping. His natural intelligence kept his grades afloat, so the teachers left him alone. But my mom was worried. She felt the parents' drama was destroying his future, and after 5 years of Leo being on his best behavior around her, she was fiercely protective of him. Fearing she'd hurt his pride, she kept subtly pushing me to talk to him about his studies. One Sunday, I went to his dorm and found him being hassled by some other kids. I didn't think twice. I punched the main guy and dragged Leo out of there. On the way, he tried to pull away, telling me that since his dad and my aunt were divorced, we had no connection, and I should leave him alone. Punched him. He immediately hit me back. We fought in a dirty back alley until we were both too exhausted to stand. Then we had to help each other walk home. We stopped at a small clinic to buy antiseptic and bandages, not wanting my mom to see our injuries. We sat on the roof of our apartment building, cleaning each other's cuts. He asked me again why I'd come looking for him. I told him he thought I wanted to, but it was my mom who made me, that she wanted me to tell him to study hard and not listen to his father's nonsense. He asked what I wanted to say to him. I blew gently on a scrape on his cheekbone. I said I didn't know what to say, except that he shouldn't do anything he'd regret. He just mumbled an "oh." I poked Leo's bicep there at the barbecue table. I asked him why he'd suddenly kissed me back then. He smiled, confessing he'd wanted to for a long time. My eyebrows shot up. I asked if he meant he'd liked me for a while. Our past was so fraught with conflict that since we'd started dating, I'd avoided bringing it up, afraid of him holding old grudges. But now that it was all out in the open, I was curious. "Leo," I asked, "when did you start liking me?" He handed me a napkin. He said it wasn't that early on, really. He used to genuinely dislike me. Then he asked if I remembered why he confessed his feelings to me during our freshman year of college. Leo had grown up knowing nobody really liked him. His father was a drunk who hit him when he was sober and hit him when he wasn't. But his dad was handsome, a trait that allowed him to charm his way through life. After his mom finally left, Leo thought things would get better. He desperately wanted to go with her, but his dad had refused, using the excuse that he was a boy and belonged with his father. Later, his dad took up with a woman from the city who couldn't have children, and Leo was brought along, forced to call this stranger mom. He refused, and the beatings resumed. The first real kindness he remembered came from my family. My mom was good to him, always careful not to wound his pride. Ethan was the older brother, the brainy one who was always studying and had no time for us. That left me. I was half a year younger but a chatterbox. Since my brother ignored me, I turned my attention to Leo. I refused to call him my older cousin brother, arguing that he was shorter so he had to be the younger brother. I built 2 Lego figures, a small skinny one for him and a tall heroic one for myself. Before he left that first day, my mom asked if there was anything he wanted. He asked for the 2 Lego figures. In the bleak landscape of his 12-year memory, No one had ever looked at his face for so long without pity or disgust, just to recreate his likeness in plastic bricks. He thought that maybe, from that moment on, I had earned a permanent pass no matter how much I bullied him. Hearing Leo's side of it, I was so stunned I forgot to chew my chicken wing. Finally swallowing, I pointed at him. So that's how it was. I said that if I'd known, I wouldn't have tattled to my mom. I thought he was just a little thief for taking my Legos. He scratched his head sheepishly, admitting he'd only asked my mom and not me, and that it was his fault. I patted my chest dramatically. "Oh, my poor Leo," I cooed. "Don't worry, I'll build you another one later." He nodded eagerly. "Okay, babe, you're the best." My brother, Ethan, ever the strategist, pushed his glasses up his nose. He noted with a thoughtful air that we'd been dating for 4 years and he hadn't suspected a thing. He called us masters of secrecy. I refilled his beer, pointing out that he and Liam had also kept their relationship hidden from me. He glanced at me, completely unruffled, and stated that his situation was different. His was a matter of strategic success through discretion. Leo, afraid of losing his narrative momentum, continued his story. Even though the Lego figure of him was taken back and he'd gotten a beating for it, the bitterness didn't last. Lying in bed that night, curled up in pain, he'd sworn he was done with me. But seeing the guilt and concern in my eyes at the hospital softened him. He reasoned that a kid like me, who'd never been hit by his parents, couldn't possibly understand the consequences of my actions. His resentment melted into envy. He wanted a normal family so badly. When my mom invited him to have lunch at our house every day, he was overjoyed. The atmosphere in our home was so warm. He wondered if growing up in a place like that would have made him a different person. When I wouldn't let him on my bed, he slept on the floor. Getting sick was a small price to pay for escaping his own home, where his father, unable to take his anger out on his new wife, used Leo as his punching bag. He knew people could die from beatings like that. He didn't want to die. His real mother was waiting for him to grow up. My image started to improve in his eyes during our martial arts phase. There was a boy in the class from his father's hometown who knew about his family's reputation. He would taunt Leo, asking if he was learning to fight so he could beat his own wife one day, like his dad. He'd talk about a crime gene, saying violence was in Leo's blood. The words terrified Leo, turning his hatred for his father into a fear of his own future. Just as he was spiraling, I appeared like a firecracker, launching myself at the other boy. I laid into him, telling him I didn't know about any crime gene, but the gene for running your mouth was clearly strong in his family. I told him he should lock his jaw shut or risk getting his tongue cut out. I threatened him with my stinky soccer feet if he ever bothered Leo again. On the way home, we were quiet. Finally, at the entrance to our neighborhood, I tugged on his sleeve, mumbling that I was just trying to scare the guy, that my feet didn't actually stink. Leo started to laugh. The absurdity of it broke through his fear. But then the laughter turned to tears. He confessed that the other boy's words had gotten to him, that he was scared he had inherited his father's violent streak because he was always fighting with me. I punched him on the arm. I told him that was ridiculous, that he only fought back because I started it. If he didn't defend himself, he'd be the weird one. I said that if his logic held, then I had a violent gene too. Besides, our scuffles were more like clumsy gymnastics than real fights. I told him not to listen to other people. The words were a release. Suddenly, I looked a lot better in his eyes. He realized our fights were just kid stuff. We were both okay. The year his stepmom finally left his dad, she asked for his opinion. He told her he'd been waiting for this day and urged her to go through with the divorce. She left him enough money for college. As she was leaving, he finally called her mom, a word she had waited 5 years to hear, and she cried. His dad found out about the money and beat him, trying to get it out of him. But Leo had already given it to his real mom for safekeeping. After that, his dad forbade him from seeing my family. Leo gave up on school, on the future. He felt the world had never been kind to him, so why should he be kind back? But he knew I was always watching him, secretly leaving food in his locker. Dumplings my mom made for the winter solstice, ribs from our Sunday dinner. He would eat them and cry for himself and his bleak future. He knew he couldn't go on like that. He wanted a family too. So the day I came to his dorm, he had deliberately provoked the resident tough guy, taking a couple of punches just to get my attention. It worked. I was furious, beat the guy up, and insisted on taking him home. On the way, Leo tested me, repeating that we had no connection anymore. I punched him harder than I ever had before. His own temper flared, and we fought in the alley until we collapsed. On the rooftop, as I gently tended to his wounds, he asked me why I came for him. I rambled about my mom making me, telling him to study, that his future was unwritten. He asked what I thought. I just told him not to do anything he would regret. Regret? The next day, Leo started paying attention in class. Someone in the world wanted him to be better. The rest was history. They became desk mates, studied relentlessly, and got into the same university, same major. The summer after graduation, his father, drunk, tried to beat him with a fishing rod. Leo wouldn't fight back. I had come over with college application forms and saw the whole thing. I lost it. I beat that man until he was begging for mercy on the floor. I told him that Leo didn't hit him back because he had decency, but I didn't. I told him he was a pathetic excuse for a man. In that moment, Leo thought I was the most amazing person in the world. He felt weak in comparison. When he told me this later, I punched him again. I explained that fear of a parent who has hurt you is ingrained, that it didn't make him weak. I listed all his strengths. His grades, his height, his looks, his kindness to strangers. I told him he was the bravest person I knew. My words made him cry. From then on, every memory he had of me was in full, vibrant color. He knew he was in love. In college, he confessed. I had expected to need time to process it, but I said yes instantly. Our college years were a blur of studying, part-time jobs, and spending every spare dollar we had on motel rooms. In Leo's version of our story, I was the hero. I knew he was romanticizing it. He was handsome and kind. Plenty of people had been good to him. But because he'd secretly fallen for me, he viewed all my actions through a rose-tinted filter. The truth was, I fell for him because he was a genuinely good person. Our life together was sweet and simple, just the two of us, too busy being in love to fight. Before I could voice some of these sentimental thoughts, Leo suddenly produced a bouquet of red roses and knelt before me. He asked me to marry him. I held out my hand. Of course, yes. It was a complete surprise. Leo was always the mature, reserved one. For him to plan something like this was a big deal. Just as I voiced this thought, Ethan snapped his fingers. "Bingo," he said. "Leo is smarter than you. He guessed about me and Liam ages ago and we coordinated. I told him I was coming out today, so he decided he'd bring you along and propose." It seemed the only victims of the day's drama were my parents. The blood pressure medication and heart pills were real, and so was their shock. I asked my brother if this meant he wasn't going to tell me his story with Liam. He said, "Hell no. My husband is tired. I'm taking him home to bed." Back at the apartment Leo and I shared, the early summer heat was already oppressive. I stripped down and sprawled under the air conditioner, admiring the ring on my finger. I picked up my phone to check the engagement post I'd made, and saw my brother's new post right below it. A photo of Liam holding roses with the caption, "I told you I wouldn't let you lose." I was about to text him for copying me when I saw a third post. It was from my dad. A picture of my mom holding a bouquet. The caption, "Honey, it's just you and me now." The three posts lined up perfectly. Later that night, I asked Leo if he thought our entire family was just a bunch of hopeless romantics. He chuckled, his whole chest vibrating. He said we were different from them. I asked how. He whispered that they were all showing off their wives, but I was showing off my husband. My face burned red. After 2 weeks of tense silence, my dad finally broke. He sent a group text summoning the four of us home for a talk. We went expecting another fight, but instead, my parents had accepted it. My dad grumbled that they were too old to control us anymore, joking that my mom had spent years living in a men's dorm, and now there were 5 of them instead of 3. My mom laughed, saying he had a sharp tongue but a soft heart. She told us we were their children, that they'd watched us grow up, and they didn't want to become the kind of parents who were resented. She trusted us. Her only condition was that we treat each other well. We all sat in the living room and cried. My mom cried the hardest, blaming her obsession with M/M romance novels during her pregnancies. She claimed her taste in fiction while pregnant with Ethan was the reason he was the way he was, and her reading choices while pregnant with me were responsible for my preferences. Ethan and I exchanged a look of pure mortification. Some things were better left unsaid. After graduation, Leo and I, both accepted into grad school at our university, used the summer break to get our marriage license with Ethan and Liam. My parents had wanted to come, but a visa issue related to my mom's job as a journalist kept them home. In a small chapel under the officiant's guidance, we exchanged vows. I'm not a religious man, but in that moment, I prayed for something to protect what we had. A man like Leo was a once-in-a-lifetime find. His love was a quiet, constant thing. In college, he'd follow me around with an electric bug zapper because of my severe mosquito allergy. Our apartment was filled with little details I'd once mentioned in passing and then forgotten, like the big picture window with a swinging chair beside it. Back home, we started our graduate programs. Life in the family group chat became a bizarre competition of romantic gestures. If my dad cooked dinner, Ethan would post a photo of the elaborate lunch he packed for Liam. If one couple bought flowers, Leo would have a bouquet waiting for me. I joined in, posting a picture of the heart-shaped eggs Leo made me. A few minutes later, my mom posted a picture of bear-shaped pancakes from my dad. It was childish, but it was fun.
I'm Ethan.
Liam was my little brother's college roommate, but he was also a kid from my elementary school chess club. He was 3 years younger, but we were at the same skill level, so we were in the same class. Liam cried about everything. He cried when he won, he cried when he lost. And since we were partners, it became my job to manage his tears. It was an incredibly annoying responsibility. I later discovered the reason for his constant wailing was that the pin on his favorite enamel badge was always poking him. He didn't know how to fasten it correctly. The fact that he could win chess tournaments while in constant, sharp pain cemented my only memory of him. A brilliant idiot. We reconnected when my brother recommended Liam for our lab. I recognized the name immediately. I was going to tease him about the chess club days, but he seemed to have forgotten, so I let it go. Our conversations started professionally about research, professors, career prospects. But soon, we were sharing details of our daily lives. And that's where the story really began. The pressure to get into our university's grad program was intense, and Liam had been preparing since his sophomore year. I invited him to the lab to get some hands-on experience. I'd initially wanted my own brother to join my lab, but he was too busy with his love life and just laughed at me for being a lonely workaholic. Annoyingly, when I tried to picture who he might be dating, the first person who came to mind was Liam. That's when I realized I was gay. Before I could figure out how to make a move, Liam confessed his feelings for me. I was ecstatic. The idea that the person I liked might like me back felt like winning the lottery. My brother had once joked I'd end up in a virtual relationship with some guy pretending to be a girl in an online game. Thankfully, Liam was real. The whole drama at my dad's 60th birthday was half about coming out and half about creating the perfect moment for Leo to propose to Cole. I didn't know the specifics of their history, only that they'd spent their childhood at each other's throats. I was initially worried their relationship was some kind of elaborate revenge plot. But then I saw them on campus one day. They were in their own world, their eyes only for each other. I followed them for a solid 10 minutes, and they never even noticed me. At that point, all I could do was wish them a lifetime of happiness. And, of course, a lifetime of happiness for my brilliant Liam and me, too.